Hi, hello, hi, and welcome back to Yapping with Isabella, the channel that does exactly what it says on the tin. I'm Isabella, and today we're going to be yapping about the Enneagram because it is a special interest of mine. First of all, as you might be able to tell, it is currently December, which is very exciting. For any of you who do celebrate Christmas, I hope you have a wonderful Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope you have a wonderful holidays. So the Enneagram, for any of you who don't know, is a personality test system. This very similar to Myers-Briggs, except way more complicated and way more accurate and way better and just the most fabulous thing. I am obsessed with it. I love it. It is a special interest of mine. As I've gotten older, I've gotten more and more interested in it and fascinated by it. It's just such an interesting thing. It really helps when I type the loved ones in my lives. It just helps me understand why they respond in the way that they respond to different situations, and it means that I can be a lot more empathetic because as people, we have a tendency to assume that other people are similar to us. Like, it's hard to understand that other people think and act and feel differently than us. And what's amazing about the Enneagram is that it makes it very, very clear and easy to understand the different ways that other people are going to respond from something, and it makes it like we can go, oh, okay, now I understand why they responded in that way. This is how I can respond to them to make sure that we're not miscommunicating with each other. So basically, that was a very quick discussion of why the Enneagram is helpful, what's good about it. Now I'll go on to a little crash course. It's very complicated. It's something that I've been studying for years. My mum is a therapist and she's been doing an Enneagram course for a year as part of her professional development, and she is still constantly learning new things despite the fact that she's been interested in this for like over 20 years. So there's always new things to learn, which is what's so exciting and amazing about the Enneagram. But you can also boil it down to the very simple basics. They're less useful than the like fully fledged thing, but they are still very useful. So the Enneagram, okay, there's nine, can't count that, 9 different Enneatypes. So this is the core type. So whereas other personality tests are kind of boxes, and once you're in your box, you're in your box, the Enneagram is much more fluid, and each type moves between the other types based on how healthy or unhealthy they are. What I love about the Enneagram is that it's very fluid. So the core type, I will explain them very, very briefly. I'm going to do another video on each of the Enneatypes and go into them in more depth, but I will link it once I've done them. I'll link them in the description area so you can go and check them out if you want more detail on each type. But for now, quick crash course. I have this theory. There are 9 Winnie the Pooh characters, and each of the Winnie the Pooh characters just randomly coincides really, really well with an Enneagram type. So I'm going to use that as a very simplified way of explaining it. So first of all, you have the type 1. So the number 1 is Rabbit. So Rabbit is a bit neurotic, very like a little bit controlling. Rabbit's not a particularly healthy one. So ones can come across as very judgmental, but they also have a really strong moral compass. So the 1, they're very helpful to have in a group scenario because they understand the rules really well, and they can either help you follow the rules very carefully, or they can work out what doesn't work about the rules and help you to change them and resist it to make it so that it's fairer for everybody. So also a really unhealthy example of a 1 Enneatype is in Hunchback of Notre Dame. I can't remember the name, but the Hellfire preacher person, he's a really good example of a really unhealthy 1. So he says, I know what is right, I know what is wrong, what you guys think doesn't matter, I'm correct. But a healthy 1 looks very good, very caring, like figures like Mother Teresa. They can kind of possibly are ones who are constantly there for people, and because they know strongly what is good, they are constantly striving to be good. They can be quite controlling, but they also can be really, really loving, and they get things done. They get things done. If you want something to happen and done well, get a 1 to do it. Okay, the second type is type 2. 2s are very loving. Like when you think of the attributes of a mother figure, That's what a 2 looks like. So they give and they give and they give and they give and they give, and often they can burn themselves out with this. 2s aren't particularly in touch with their own needs. They're very aware of everyone else's needs. They're constantly making sure everyone else is okay. But when people ask, are you okay? They often won't be able to answer, because for them, how they're feeling is secondary to how everyone else is feeling, which can lead to resentment, because they want their needs to be met, but they don't ever ask for those needs to be met. So it can be very difficult for their loved ones sometimes, because they're like, we're trying to help you. You won't let us help you. You aren't telling us what you need. So 2s come across as though they're giving love without any strings attached, but actually there are strings attached. The 2s just don't realize that, and often the 2s' loved ones don't realize that either, until suddenly the 2s blow up and just can't deal with it anymore. But saying that, 2s are the most loving people. Like, often teachers, social workers, nurses, therapists, like a lot of my mum's friends who are therapists are 2s. Those sort of people, that's the sort of careers that 2s gravitate towards. Just very, very friendly, very warm, very good at listening, always there for everybody. The 2 in Winnie the Pooh is Kanga, so the traditional mother figure, always aware of what everyone else needs, kind of puts herself to the side, is always making sure everyone else is okay. Okay, next we have type 3, which is the achiever, and in terms of Winnie the Pooh, this is Tigger. So Tigger is very high energy, always wanting to do more. Tigger wants to be the best at everything. Bouncing is what Tiggers do best. Tiggers are the best at climbing trees. Gets up the tree, gets to the top, realizes that he's bitten off more than he can chew, and actually Tiggers don't know how to get down from trees. That's very typical of what a 3 will do within their life. They will try and try and try and try and try. 3s are very, very competitive, always want to be doing really well, which means that they achieve amazing things. But 3s also don't have a huge amount of sense of their own self-worth, because all of their self-worth comes from the achievements that they are doing. So when they're burning themselves out, when they're not able to keep going, that suddenly they have no self-worth. My sister, she is actually a 7 as her core type, but she has very, very strong 3 tendencies. So she explains it very well, of saying, yes, she achieves amazing things, but she always sees them as the bare minimum. So 3s can really, really struggle, because they can achieve so much and still think they're not doing enough. So 3s are great in a group because they will get it done. They will achieve things to a really high standard, but you have to keep an eye on a 3 to make sure they're not burning themselves out. And I think keep a little eye, if you've got 3 loved ones in your life, keep an eye on their insecurities and make sure that you keep building them up and saying, no, you're doing a really good job, because they do need to hear that quite often. Okay, 4. 4 is Eeyore. Eeyore is a really unhealthy example of a 4. So not all 4s are miserable all the time. In fact, most 4s aren't. But Eeyore is a great example of a 4 when they're not doing so well. So it's the constantly being like, oh, it's a bit rubbish type thing. 4s can fall into that. 4 is the type name is the individualist. And 4s have very extreme emotions. So 4s feel things a lot more deeply than other people. So other people might say, look at a 4 and say, oh, you're so sensitive. But that's not a bad thing. Yes, 4s are really sensitive, but that is because they feel things really, really deeply, which means that they can have a lot of empathy for others when they're in a good place. And also 4s are amazing creative types. So 4s are constantly creating wonderful things. 4s will be artists, actors, musicians, painters, like anything creative. 4s probably do at some point. They love creative things, they love expression of self, they get a lot of their self-worth from the expression of self. They will often have very quirky fashion, they will stand out. 4s are fantastic at coming up with new ideas and seeing things from perspectives that other people might not necessarily have seen it from. However, the downside of 4s is they do feel such extreme emotions. Like my sister's boyfriend is a 4, and he goes from thinking he's the best person who has ever existed to thinking he's completely worthless. And this is very typical for a 4. They kind of flip-flop back and forward, and you can see this really strongly with Eeyore. So one day Eeyore is miserable and thinks everyone hates him and that he's worthless, and the next day they're having a party for Winnie the Pooh, and Eeyore thinks the party is for him, because of course it is, because he's so fabulous. So that's quite a good example curve of 4-ishness. Okay, let's move on to type 5. Owl in Winnie the Pooh is the type 5. The owl is not a great example of type 5 because, again, he is a really unhealthy example of a type 5. So type 5 tends to be more withdrawn. They're very observant, constantly wanting to understand about the world, and their main interest tends to be knowledge and information. So if you know anything about autism and the traits of autism actually align pretty well with the type 5 Enneatype. And you might be thinking, oh, but autism's a bad thing. Autism is not a bad thing. Neurodivergency is not a bad thing. Being neurodivergent is fabulous and great. But the type 5s can reflect the traits of autism in that they can be more withdrawn from social situations. They can struggle with social interactions. When you first meet a 5, they'll be very, very different than when you get them one-on-one and they feel more comfortable with you. They will chat and chat and chat when you're one-on-one with them, and if you're asking them the right questions about the things they're interested in. So types 5s tend to have very intense interests, the same as an autistic person might. So 5 is, Owl is, he talks a lot. He's not got a huge grasp of social norms. He sometimes can't tell when people are getting bored. He has kind of a big sense of his own self-importance, but he knows what he's talking about. Like, he is knowledgeable. If you want a question answered, all the other animals in the 100-Acre Wood, they go to Owl because they know that he has the knowledge. And the same with the type 5. Like, 5s are amazing in a team because they observe things in a different way than other people. They tend to be very, very emotionally intelligent if that's an area of interest for them. Like, I find that I can have much deeper and more interesting conversation with 5s than I can with any other type because just their interest in the world is so fascinating. What can be difficult for type 5s is because they are so intellectual, they can struggle to relate to the world in a more physical way, in a more emotional way, because they tend to be more interested in facts. So this can mean that they can feel disconnected, they can feel spacey, they can find it hard to connect with other people. They also can isolate themselves because they find it difficult to talk to people straight away because they like to make really strong judgments about people before they put their time into interacting with them. So often if you're in a room and there's someone sitting in the corner with a notebook or with a book and they're just sitting there and they're watching everything that's going on, they're probably a type 5 who's observing the situation. And then when they do say things, it will be really smart and interesting and insightful. The next type is type 6. Type 6 is Piglet. So type 6 is the little baby anxious type. I love 6s. They are the sweetest people, but they are anxious about everything. Type 6s are pretty much permanently in fight or flight, so it can be very difficult to be a 6. The same with 5. 5, 6 and 7 are the anxiety types. I'll talk more about them in a later video. But the 6 embodies anxiety. So Piglet is like, he's so sweet, but he is so stressed. Bless him, all of the time. He is just like, oh, it's so scary, the world is so scary. 6s are quite like this. My partner's a 6. I love them to bits, but they are terrified of everything, which works because I'm not scared of anything, so we help each other. They remind me that sometimes things are actually scary, and I remind them that sometimes things aren't actually scary, so it works. But the 6, they are called the loyalist. The 6s are so loyal. If you've got the loyalty of a 6, they will stand behind you through anything. Like, they are going to be there for you. They will have your back. They're also very good at planning because they're always planning for the worst case scenario. So when you're working with a 6 in a group, the 6s will have contingency plan after contingency plan. They will know all the information. They will have different case scenarios for all the different things that could arise. Very, very helpful. If there is an emergency, a 6 suddenly becomes so calm and they know what they're doing and they get it sorted. Like, they will be panicking all day, every day. And then when it's actually time when you would expect them to panic, so calm. They know what to do it. They're doing. They get it sorted. 7. 7 is Roo from Winnie the Pooh. Very, very sweet. Bit naive. Wants to chuck themselves into everything, sees everything as a huge adventure. So my sister is at core a 7, and what that means is that she is so cheerful and she loves things. She will throw herself in without thinking. They've got very bad impulse control. So whereas 5s reflect some of the traits of autism, 7s reflect a lot of the traits of ADHD. Low impulse control, high hyperactivity, always wanting to be on the go, gets bored very easily. So boredom for sevens is like the worst thing that could ever happen. Like, it's physically painful for a seven to be bored, which means that they're always on the move. They're always jumping from project to project, sometimes not finishing them. Often they'll find it difficult staying in one place, so they might move around a lot. They'll have a big social network, tends to be social butterflies, constantly on the move, constantly looking for the next fun and exciting thing. So it's really nice to have them on a team, because they tend to be very positive, tend to be very optimistic, very, very social. They are the most extroverted of all the types, like 97% of sevens are extroverts or something crazy like that. But what you have to watch out for when you're working with them is that they will jump from task to task, and they will get bored very easily, and they might struggle to actually finish the tasks that they're being set. Seven is also an anxious type. They are so afraid of being bored. They can push themselves too far, and my sister describes feeling like she's not a person when she's not around other people, because she's that violently extroverted. Always wants to be doing things, has such high expectations for themselves, constantly just chucking themselves into everything without often looking before they fall. Like in Winnie the Pooh, Roo gets very excited about Tigger. They go on a climb. Tigger climbs them to the top of the tree. Roo agrees to do it without really thinking about it, because he thinks it's really exciting. They get to the top of the tree. They're stuck. Neither of them have thought about it. Neither of them have any impulse control. Not great. And when he falls into the river and he's like, look at me swimming, look at me swimming. And it's like, dude, this is unsafe, but he's having a great time. So yeah, that's the 7. Let's move on to the 8. That's me! I'm the 8. The 8 is Winnie the Pooh, but whereas some of the other types I've talked about with the Winnie the Pooh analogy, they are unhealthy versions of the type. Winnie the Pooh is peak health for an 8. So the 8 is the challenger. Oh my god, I nearly forgot what my own type was called. The challenger. Which means the 8s like to argue. Like, we're really good at arguing. We're really good at pointing out the flaws in things and standing our ground, having strong boundaries. So with Winnie the Pooh, he is very chill. The 8s, when they're healthy, are the most embodied of all of the types. So they can be very in their body, very sensual people. Like, I love food. 8s can be huge foodies because we're very sensual. We like things that make us happy and bring us joy, and physical things that we can touch and feel. So Winnie the Pooh, obviously obsessed with honey. That's a very strong 8ish thing of like, yes, this is something I'm really enjoying. Also, once you are friends with an 8, they will look after you. But the 8, when they're healthy, goes to the caregiver role, so they can be very, very warm. But whereas a 2 will look more like very warm with it, an 8 will be kind of intense with their love. Like, 8s, it's kind of Mother Henish, like it's clucking around people being like, are you sure you should be doing that? Let me look after you. Have you got enough clothes on? Like, it's kind of disapproving affection, where it's like, where people can be like, whoa, can you back off now? Like, I do actually know how to live my life. And the 8s are like, I'm just trying to look after you. So it's, the 8 is also very judgmental, and we do it without realizing we're doing it. Like, we're not aware that we are like belittling others sometimes until people point it out and we go, oh my god, that's not what I meant to say at all, that's not what I meant, like, I was just expressing concern for you, I didn't want to like smother you or anything. 8s also have very strong sense of boundaries. So an 8 is the type, if something goes wrong in a room, an 8 will call it out and they will stand up for it and they will say that was not okay. But the downside of an 8 is that they can be very controlling. So you have to be careful if you're in a relationship with an 8. If they are unhealthy, they will become controlling, and that can be very, very dangerous. They can stop seeing other people as people because they have such a strong sense of self, and if they're unhealthy, they can disconnect from others. 8s go to the 5 type when they're unhealthy, which is the withdrawing themselves from the world, and that can become really controlling, and they can see other people as pawns in their games. So that's the scary part of 8s. As with all the types, there's positive sides and negative sides with the 8s, but yes, they can be quite controlling. Okay, let's move on to type 9, the last type. The 9 is called the Peacemaker type, and the 9 in Winnie the Pooh is Christopher Robin. So Christopher Robin is very central to Winnie the Pooh, but he's kind of removed from the others. Like, fixes the problems, but he's not quite one of them. Like, he's slightly separate. And that's the same with the 9s. Like, 9s will be part of the group, but they'll kind of blend in a little bit. They won't stand out a lot. They won't make their own voice heard unless they're encouraged to. They're very about peace. They want people to get along, and it really stresses them out if people don't get along. So like in Winnie the Pooh, if anyone has an argument, Christopher Robin is there to fix it. Christopher Robin is there to solve the problems and support other people, but he kind of takes a bit of a backseat in terms of like personality wise. Like when you think of the characters in Winnie the Pooh, the other characters have very strong characters and very strong personalities. Christopher Robin does have a strong personality, but it's a little bit less intense than the others, and this is kind of the 9-ishness. So 9s, they're great to have as a friend because they will make sure that people in a group get on with each other. They really love fixing the problems and making sure that people get along and solving misunderstandings. However, 9s struggle to take up space. Like, they will apologize for everything all of the time, and no matter how much you say, you really don't have to apologize, you're allowed to take up space. A 9 will be like, oh, I'm sorry. And 9s can feel kind of disconnected from themselves and others. They can kind of blend into the wallpaper a little bit if they're not careful, and because they are so interested in peace and finding peace, it can mean that even if they have ambitions, they won't meet those ambitions because it can be easier and feel safer to stay where it is safe and peaceful. So if you've got 9s in your life, it can be really good to kind of poke them and be like, you know that thing you want to do? I think you should do it. You should do it. And eventually they will do it. So they're really loving, really lovely, really warm, but need to be poked to do the things they want to do and not put themselves at a back seat of their own life and kind of watch what's going on without participating very actively. Okay, that is very speedy crash course of all 9 Enneatypes. I will now do a video for each type going much more in depth. That was just an introduction to the Enneagram. If you want to understand them more, it's called Sleeping at Last. He's an amazing artist, and he has done a series of songs, one for each Enneatype, and it's written with lots of people who are that Enneatype about their experience. They're really beautiful. The 8-1 made me sob so much, curled into a ball, like dry heaving, like oh my god, not okay. It's so beautiful, made me feel so seen, so heard. A lot of the other ones are really beautiful as well. So if you listen to them and work out which one makes you feel the most, that might be a good indicator of what type you are. There are also some online quizzes and stuff to work out which type you are. They're not fantastic, like, I'll be honest, they're not brilliant. They can get it wrong quite a lot, but I will leave the link to my favourite one in the description. That's the best one, I think, in terms of the questions that it asks, and it tends to be quite accurate. It still can be inaccurate because it's not quite, because the Enneagram is such a complex thing, it can be really hard to type someone without asking them a lot of deep questions, and also because each health level looks very different within a type, it can type you wrong because you might be at a different health level than the test expects. But I mean, it's a good place to start if you do the test and then go and look at my video for whichever type you come out as, and then you can see whether you relate to it or not. And if you don't relate to it, then maybe it'll give you a little graph that tells you how strongly you are of each type. Then maybe watch the one that is your second strongest and see if that one you relate to it more. It can be a lot of trial and error working out, but once you've got it, oh my god, you learn so much about yourself. It's so fascinating. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you have a fantastic festive season, or if you're don't celebrate Christmas, then just have a fantastic holiday, a fantastic end of the year. I hope that you get to be cozy and drink lots of nice hot chocolate, or go and watch the stars, or something nice. And I hope you've got lots of people who care about you to be around and give them lots of big hugs. Okay, I'll see you in my next video. Goodbye!
Come yap with me, bring a cup of tea. I never shut up before. Now I record my yapping and you know what's happening. Subscribe if you want more.